Perek Aleph, chapter 1, number 7. Nita Breli Omer, Hachik Mishochin Ro. Distance yourself from a bad neighbor. Val Tischabe L'Rosha. Don't attach yourself to an evil person. Shochin Ro means a bad neighbor. Man, he has a certain level of negative characteristics. Keep your distance. But we speak about an evil person, Al Tischabe L'Rosha. Don't attach yourself to him. Now, what's the difference between a bad neighbor and attach yourself to a Rosha? If a person has a certain value system, and we don't want that value system to be compromised, even when we're exposed to a bad person, a very bad person, and we have ongoing dealings with it on a certain regular basis, what do? We actually take certain precautions, not to be influenced by the relationship. In Hebrew, the word chaver means a friend. Why is a friend called chaver? Because in Hebrew, chibur means to attach yourself. A chaver is a person which you attach yourself. Al tischaber l'rosha. Don't attach yourself to a rosha. A neighbor, you don't attach yourself to a neighbor. In passing, you greet him, you acknowledge him, and there's certain subliminal influences which go between both of you, which you don't even realize. A comment, a body language, how you be affected. As a result of that, the precautions you have to take in certain situations, you don't take those precautions, and as a result of that, you become actually victimized. For instance, I'll give you an example. You're walking down the street, and the environment is not conducive to spirituality. Not only that, there are certain negative representations which are contrary to your spirituality. But you have nothing to do with that environment. You're just passing through. But passing through because consciously, cognitive-wise, you're not part of it. You don't take certain precautions that you should take because you're not engaging with any of the people in that environment. But factually, because you let your guard down, because you're not cognizant of the negative influences of that environment, you could become victimized. Therefore, we say, harchek mishochin ra. If you have a bad neighbor, keep your distance. Why keep your distance? Because they're not being conscious of what it is, you just have to stay away. And ultimately, you can be hurt. A Russia that you know is a Russia. The man represents something evil. You detest him. He represents everything which is the opposite of what you value. You'd say, you know something, whenever I pass him, there's no mistaking, my antennas are up, I have nothing to do with this guy. You don't have to be concerned, you can be influenced by him. Because he's such an aberration, he's such a negative representation, you want nothing to do with the man. So therefore, even if you're not cognizant, not special cognizance, it's natural you're cognizant. Because he's not a bad person, he's evil. An evil person, that cognizance is there, even though you're not consciously cognizant. It's just a reality. So let's say you have a person who's a Russia, an evil person, and you have to have dealings with him. And you have to be associated with him. You have to sit in the same office, and you have to interact with him. Once we talk about interaction, even though you know what he is, but you never know to what degree you could be affected. We'll see in a moment. So a person says, you know something? I know what he is. I want nothing to do what he is, but you know something? But whatever good I could take from him, I'll attach myself to him to be part of the good, to be a beneficiary of the good aspects of what he represents. Although he's a Russia. We'll see in a moment. You pass every morning, you come down the elevator, and there's a certain person. Not such a great person. It's not a Russia, but there's a certain body language that he represents certain things which are contrary to what you're all about. And the person may ask you a question, or may say something. You never know to what degree that question could affect you. Therefore, you know something. If you know that person's going down at the elevator every morning at 8:30, you take the elevator down at 8:15. You don't want to have any level of interaction with that person. Because what the person represents, not being obviously evil, but that person has certain values, and those values are not good for you to be exposed to. And because they're not so obvious, blatantly negative, you could be victimized by it. I'll give you an example. You live in an environment where the air quality is not great, and you have respiratory issues. So for a healthy person to be in that area where the air quality is not so great, it's not the end of the world. But if you live there for about 60 years and you breathe in that air, which is lacking air quality, ultimately you could compromise your lungs. The person already has the respiratory issue. They say, stay indoors. The air quality is not good enough. Stay indoors. Because for you, you could be compromised very quickly. The other person, it's a gradual diminishment of your lungs. May take years, but ultimately you can be affected by it. But since you don't sense the effect, you're oblivious to it. But ultimately, you're being compromised. What about to go into a coal mine? And there's a statistic, when you stay in a coal mine, you stay there for 3 months, you get black lung. You know something? You don't go into that coal mine. Because going there, because of the level of coal dust in there, within a short period of time, you're going to have real serious issues. Yeah, but you realize, if I go into that coal mine, I'll be able to take out a fortune of whatever may be. I can mine it in that coal mine. You understand? But you know what it's going to cost you? It could cost you your life. You want to forfeit your life for the sake of whatever profit you're going to make. It's not worth it. You're not a candidate for a lung transplant, lung transplant. Stay out of the coal mine. That's the difference. Keep your distance from a bad neighbor. The bad neighbor over time, subliminally, is going to affect you. And because it's not so blatantly obvious, and the person's not really evil, but just has bad qualities, and those qualities, if you expose them long enough, it's going to diminish you. Keep your distance. Don't have any interaction. Many years ago, we want to be good doers. Good doers. So, comes Shabbat, and you want to invite a non-observant person to the table of Shabbat, because you're a good doer. And that person, his beliefs, his values, every aspect of his being has no relevance. I'm not even talking about observance. I'm talking about quality of values, totally off. Lives high in the hog. He borders on hedonism. He has certain compromises, certain areas of behavior. You don't want that guy at your table. But by having a table, you may change him. You may have some impact, but what impact is it going to have on your family, on you? By interacting with the guy and hearing the person maybe use language or tell you, sharing his life with you, you don't want to hear about it. But it's okay, I'm a big boy. You hear enough of that stuff, ultimately, you don't know how you could be compromised. You go to a certain vacation area, and there's certain basic standards which are not there, and you're exposed to it, even for a short period of time, automatically, your standard is compromised. I'll give you an example. 50 years ago, a person would have an extramarital affair, pre-marriage relations with a woman, and people would hear about it. In the society 50 years ago, people would see that person in a negative light. That person compromised his ethical, moral standing 50 years ago. Today, take it with a grain of salt. Not the end of the world. Even the person 50 years who maybe would cringe or grimace when he heard about it, today, it's so common. What happened? We're the same people. You're exposed to something long enough, automatically your standards become compromised. You get worn down. So God forbid, that same person 50 years ago, if somebody would try to seduce him, you couldn't go near him. Today, that same person, if that woman would try to seduce him, he has to take extra precaution not to be seduced, not to be victim of that seduction. It's a different world. Why? Because it's a gradual decline. Gradually, over the past 50 years, society has actually declined in many areas of values, ethics, morals, everything has gone. And it's literally skin thin. That's how thin it's on thin ice. Doesn't take much to break through, to fall through the ice and drown, God forbid. But that's harchik mishach and raw. You want to be exposed to that kind of environment. Because over time, that environment, it's a slippery slope. When I say slippery slope, that doesn't mean it's going to happen in 2 days. 30 years is also a slippery slope. Life passes very quickly. When you're a young man, you're middle-aged, you never know how you could be affected. Things change in life. The world is different. That's the reality. If the level of precautions we have to take today are not the precautions we had to take 50 years ago. Because the issues are different issues. Give you an example. When the speed limit was 30 miles an hour, the guardrail that you had on the road only had to withstand a certain degree of impact. Today, we have roads, we have 70 mile an hour speed limits. Those guardrails have to be different kind of guardrails. Today, you have to have airbags. Today, without a seatbelt, you're putting your life in danger. You have to have certain structure within the car that, God forbid, if something happens, you shouldn't be crushed to death. That's what it is. What happened? It's a different world. People are going at a different pace. People are pushing the envelope to the nth degree. That's where today. That's harchik mishach and ra. Keep your distance from a bad neighbor. Because if a person has a certain value and it's not a good value, over time, it will affect you. Subliminally, you'll be worn down, you'll be compromised.